Right, hello. Welcome to the Perspective Podcast. That's what I'm going to call this. This is episode 1. It's the show where everything's made up and the points don't matter. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this essentially because I think that it's not a bad idea to promote hope or the idea of hope. And secondly, just sharing stuff that I do that works for me in the hopes that it would work for somebody else. So, I'm going to choose a topic every time I have a discussion. It'll just be one simple topic, and I'll give one practical example. Keep it simple. So the topic I'll have chosen for the first one is really around the concept of hope. Now I'm going to talk a little about hope and despair, and about a book that I read many years ago, and I just dusted off the cover and read it again. I realized it didn't really take on enough of that, and I think now's the time to consider more of that idea. And the book is one called Man's Search for the Meaning of Life, I believe. It's by Victor Frankl. I'll put the link in the bottom if you want to read that, and you could probably find videos on it anyway. And his life experience is that he was a survivor of the Nazi death camps, um, and he, I suppose, had many discoveries or realizations about the difference between hope and despair. And what it wasn't so much that hope allowed him to survive. I think there was an element of luck in that, but it also, I suppose, increased his chances. But maybe in a sense, it wasn't even about surviving for him. And if you read the book, I think you'll see that. And there's a big learning, I think, in that. It's sort of like the idea that there's more to life than living. So here we are today. We're in this situation with the global pandemic, and ironically, the chances of survival are significantly higher than that of a Nazi death camp. I know that's an obscure observation to make. In fact, they're polar opposite. However, I think it would probably be fair to say that a lot of people are in a state of despair, even though in reality it's a much rosier picture. And so there's something in that. There's something in the human psyche that turns to despair quite easily. What he seemed to think it was is that people, in essence, lost hope, and through that, purpose and meaning. And in many instances, he also felt that they were, I suppose, become too inwardly focused in terms of their own fate. That's a weird thing to say, but probably relevant. Because, like I said, that idea that humanity is bigger than us. We're all connected. And this isn't the first time in history that these types of things have happened. It's been going on for millennia. And so when you think of it in that perspective, you might have a slightly different view, or you might come to the realization that this is just a point in time in history, and you're here. So, what was a practical thing that he came out with, which was essentially the basis for his logotherapy, which was a sort of branch of psychology almost these days, I think, was he had this 3-point method, which is just one page in the book. It's like 3 lines. And like, if you try this, I would urge, write this down. I'll put it in the link below. Just write it down on a piece of paper, put it up on the wall somewhere, and just leave it there. Even if you don't act on it, leave it there for a while. And every time you walk past it, eventually you might start thinking about it, and then you can act on it. And it's pretty simple, really. Well, it's incredibly deep, but pretty simple. And so the first point that he said is, have a project, something that you get out of bed for, and preferably something that serves others. I think for him, his project was being the light of hope to his fellow prisoners. I don't think he necessarily did that as a Samaritan thing. Ironically, I think it was more of a perspective thing. It wasn't trying to be a good person. It was just that he felt there was something in that that could give him perspective. Now, obviously, for me, it would be very different, and maybe for anybody, wherever they are, um, and we're all in different circumstances. So I chose something really simple that I knew that I could do. Um, I'm in a quite cold part of the world. You wouldn't believe it today looking at the sun, but in essence, I've spent the last 10 weeks just about every day cutting up wood, splitting it, and so that was my daily project. And amongst others, I have a routine, but that was something that I felt I needed to make important. And that's used by the family, not so much by myself, and so that serves that last purpose. And I found that as actually being quite a good thing, something very basic, but useful. So that's the first thing. The second thing was, he said, see how your difficulties serve you, which is ironic. It's like that question of when something happens in life that's, can be good, bad, or diabolical. See how it serves you, rather than taking on the perspective of why me, which is the most common expression, is why did this happen to me? Maybe to look at it differently and see how it serves you. And so I think for him, he was seeing that how it served him was to change his perspective about just himself, and I suppose realize his connectedness to other people. But once again, it wasn't a Samaritan thing, it was just a realization. For me, what I've done is, in essence, looked a lot back in history and stuff like that and put that into perspective, realizing that this isn't the first time in history this kind of thing's happened. There's so many points in history that have been very dark. The 100 Years' War, even more recent times, the Cold War, things like the witch hunts, Joan of Arc, you know, there's so many. And so that helps me with a bit of perspective. And also, I think maybe some of my own life experiences, and putting that all together, I've started to, more than ever, release the need to have to convince people I'm right. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything, but very much trying to be compassionate, trying to let go, trying to understand that there's a lot of polarized opinion now and not much conversation, and accepting that part of this is actually trying to understand that we are all connected, and taking on a new level of compassion that allows me to let go of this need to be right, because I think that's causing a lot of the polarization. It's a survival thing, and just trying to see the good things in daily life and in conversations with people on all different parts of the spectrum. So that was the second thing. The third thing was, he said, share your life daily with people that love you, or person that loves you unconditionally. So for me, that's taken on a new perspective in that, and that has been a while for me, is I don't see sharing your life as posting on Facebook. It sounds ironic, although I'm posting this video on YouTube, so you could argue I'm talking a bunch of nonsense. But the point is, I don't feel the need to have any kind of response from this, or have any perspective, or anything that can be I suppose, deemed as right or wrong. It's more just to share something that I feel is positive, and I'm trying to share positive stuff. And part of that equation is that we're also disconnected at the moment, out of touch with one another. And a lot of the social media doesn't help that, and the algorithms. And also the mainstream media is just pumping out fear day in, day out, focusing on all these things. And so I guess there's a way to connect with people more directly. So I've been staying in touch with people more directly and, resonating with some, maybe not so much with others, and that's okay. Just taking a compassionate view. I think everyone has something to say, they have some feelings about things. And, even if I disagree with some perspectives, I allow people to express themselves. So that's the part of that. But I'm also very mindful of who I suppose I categorize in that idea of unconditional love. I'd like to think I was so noble to say that that's a human experience, and it probably is, but maybe we're just a bit too shy of achieving that just yet. So for now, I'm trying to do something really basic, staying in touch with people. I have a kind of group of people that I communicate with fairly frequently and directly. So that's the way I've kind of done that, and I do feel it's actually quite helpful because I'm not stuck in that rat wheel of fear. Letting go of that, and I think the opposite of fear is actually probably hope. So there you go. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Peace and love.